How is our online presence working?
Good. We're ready to go whenever you are. We have enough for quorum.
Okay, I guess I'll see if my Teams gets on soon enough. We can just get started. Okay. It is 2:32 and we call this January 13th, 2022 meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee to order. Aaron, would you do the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Lyon.
Here.
Mr. Rudolph for Miss Acton.
Here.
Miss Heil.
Speaking.
Mr. Coy is here. Mr. Van Ho.
Present.
Miss Kilcoyne. Not here. Mr. Stitchick.
Present via Teams.
Thank you. Mr. Boland.
Here.
Mr. Lindemood.
Present.
Mr. Rebuffo.
Here.
And Mr. Colhayes. We have two absent, but we have quorum.
Okay, great. Would you also now, Aaron, do the public involvement announcement?
I'd be happy to. All AMATS committees are open to the public and the public is invited to participate. Action items are presented on first by staff or consultant. After that, the committee will discuss the item, after which the public is invited to formally comment.
Perfect. Okay, do we have a motion for approving the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lyon, seconded by Mr. Van Ho. Do we have any changes to it? I don't hear any. Are there any objections to approving the agenda? Okay, hearing no objections, the agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is item 4, approval of the meeting minutes for December 2nd, 2021. Do we have any changes? I have one minor change on page 10, where in the halfway down where it talks about asking if the public has the tip criteria. It should be the tip handbook. Tip criteria handbook. So pretty minor, but make that one change in my end. That's great. Any other edits? Okay, are there any objections to approving the minutes with that one change? Not hear any objections. The December 2nd, 2021 minutes are approved. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5A, the CAC District 5 appointment. Is this one that, Aaron, you're going to be presenting on?
Yes, I will be presenting on this one.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so AMATS has a vacant position on this Citizens Advice or the Community Advisory Committee. I apologize. District 5. So we sent out a notice for 30 days asking for applications. We received 3 applications, which you can find before you on the agenda. Staff sat down and reviewed the 3 applications and are bringing forward our recommendation today. Our recommendation is Mike Rayburg. Mr. Rayburg has worked in the biological sciences most of his career. He's been a wildlife biologist with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game since 2011. And we feel this experience has potential to bring valuable input when evaluating shared space during the transportation decision-making process. Mr. Rayburg would like to help inform transportation planning for the municipality, to discuss and advise on transportation projects that can ease travel across town, serve all of our communities, improve safety for children in neighborhoods like his own, and to learn what goes into planning for transportation in Anchorage. We feel that his resume shows he has enough qualifications to provide great benefit to our CAC.
Perfect, thank you, Aaron. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'll just let the committee know that I had kids at the same school as Mr. Rayburg, so I've known him previously. I think he'd be a great choice. I'm happy to abstain if folks want, but I think he's a good choice. So.
Okay, thank you, Craig. It's always good to have some of that interaction and prior experience. Any other questions or comments? Um, I do have a few that I want to make. As I was looking through the three applicants, my thoughts were for Michael Rayburg, definitely capable and accomplished. For the second one, which is Patrick Malone, he provided a job resume, but did not explain his relevant experience or reasons for wanting to be involved. And then for Mark Grover, as I read through it, my thoughts were definitely lots of relevant experience, substantial involvement, valuable insight, willingness to ask hard questions, and make us work harder with better results, was what I thought as I saw Mark Grover. And really everything on his resume looking through, definitely very involved, but there is that, so I'm curious what staff might say for not putting Mark Grover ahead, given what I'm seeing on his application.
Well, as we were looking through, we did try and talk between the two because they do both have qualifications. But when you read through Mark Grover's application, it comes off as very aggressive and argumentative in its approach. And we feel that in order to provide an environment where anyone can come and provide comments and not feel that they're in an unsafe space, Mark Grover may not necessarily meet that feeling. And so based on what he submitted, we felt he would not be a good candidate for our group.
Got it. So I have had some personal interaction with Mark, and I can see where some of the way he comes across does have some of that feel. Personally, I haven't had that experience with him of that becoming argumentative. So there's this part of me that would really love Mark to be on it, with the recognition that if he could do it without being argumentative, that would be kind of an essential part of that. Okay, those are my thoughts on that. But I appreciate, you mentioning kind of what you were seeing with that. The public, I guess anything else from the committee? Any questions, comments? Anyone online? Do we have anybody online that wants to comment now from the public?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Could you state your name and then go ahead?
Sure. My name is Mr. Aggressive and Argumentative. It's Mark Rayburg. And if I may?
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, thank you. I think one of the things that staff may be missing is that having spent a good deal of time talking to people who wanted to be heard by AMATS and people who have been on AMATS advisory committees, to a person, they have virtually all indicated that AMATS does not hear them. AMATS doesn't listen to them. AMATS ignores them. And not to put too fine a point upon it, that the purpose of the advisory committees, multiple advisory committees, being essentially as identified in their bylaws to convey public input to AMATS, may well be totally missing, in that, at least according to my informants and my own experience, it doesn't happen. So I have to wonder if what staff is doing is ensuring that nobody who is assertive, and I beg you to understand the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness, that if staff intentionally excludes anybody who's assertive and anybody who wants to bring public concerns to AMATS, that arguably they're doing a good job based on my informants. So I would encourage you to avoid being offended by the fact that people don't like what you're doing, and focus instead on the fact that people want to help you do it better. And that having reviewed the resumes, and Mike Rayburg is a very nice guy, I would suggest that my resume has an extensive background in these kinds of matters, especially advocacy and public involvement that you really need. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments? Is anyone else in mind that's any comments, Kristen? Okay, so what is the will of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to recommend the appointment of Mike Rayburg for this committee to the policy committee.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lang.
I'll second. Shane.
Shane Arakilpa?
Yes, I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, seconded by Mrs. Kilcoyne. Are there any objections to approving the motion? I still personally feel like Mark is the better option. If that's the case for me, when we do a vote, do I just say no, or what are some of my options?
Well, I was also going to say, it seems to me that my understanding is these recommendations come from staff.
Right.
Do we want staff to take a second look?
Is there,
Because one option is for us just to give it back to staff and tell us, are you sure?
The answer is going to be the same regardless.
and I know that the policy committee is the one that's making the
Right, we just
decision.
recommend that they make the final.
So we're
Fair.
making a recommendation to them.
Yes, if there is any kind of objection, I would recommend a call and do it by person and have them say yes or no.
Okay, so let's say it again. Oh, do a roll call and have
Yeah.
each person say,
I mean, yeah, if you want to.
and yeah, so not to try to make it a political situation. It seems like, given that I want to vote differently, that we probably should do it by call. No hard feelings here. I don't know, any other thoughts on that, how we proceed with it? If I wanted to make a different recommendation, we vote on this and.
You have a motion on the floor right now. We need to vote on this motion. You can do it by voice vote, or you can do it how you did with asking for objections. But this motion needs to be dealt with before we can go to another one, so.
Right,
Okay.
and I guess my only point is, having not seen all the resumes, we're sort of relying on staff to give us what they feel the best.
Well, you have all of the applications here and they've been posted for a week, so.
Right, well, and fair, I haven't read them,
Sounds good.
but staff clearly has recommended one.
Okay.
So,
Let's do a kind of a vote by person, and we'll see how it ends up, and then go from there.
Before we get, I have a question.
Okay.
This is Cindy
Go
Heil.
ahead.
And I'm just wondering, I can't remember, I know I've been around forever, but I just can't remember the process. If it turns out there is a disruption in the committee, is there ways to remove a person? after
Yes,
the fact?
there are, and that's by the committee itself. The committee itself makes a recommendation to remove a person from their own committee. And that would come through the TAC to the policy committee.
Okay, well, that's just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that there are options if something is, the committee itself finds it's having difficulties in doing their role. Thank you.
Ms. Heil? Okay, who will do the roll call? Is that your job, Aaron, or is that?
The chair's job, isn't it? It's your job to go through and name each person.
Okay, sounds good. I will go through and name each person. Okay, Mr. Lyon.
Yes.
Is Bart on?
Yes, he is.
Mr. Rudolph.
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Heil.
Yes.
And Mr. Van Ho.
Yes.
Ms. Kilpine.
Yes.
Mr. Stitchick.
Yes.
Mr. Bullen.
Yes.
Mr. Lindemood.
Yes.
Mr. Rebuffo.
Yes.
Mr. Colhase. Is he not on?
I think he's absent.
Okay, is there anyone else that I'm missing besides myself?
No, that is everyone.
Okay, I'm gonna be a no. So it looks like I lost. So I didn't quite get the numbers on that, but it looks like we are advancing the recommendation.
9 yes, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Okay, sounds good. So the motion then passes that the TAC committee is recommending Michael Rayburg to the policy committee for appointment to the community advisory committee. Okay, so let's move. Is there anything else that needs to happen on that, or pretty much that was over?
That's all from staff.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is agenda item 5B, TIPS Administrative Modification number 6. Is this one yours too, Aaron?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So as you know, periodically we have to make updates to the TIP. Something comes along where we need to adjust funding up or down, and this is one of those. So the first thing you'll see on the memo before you is an adjustment to Table 2 roadways, the pavement replacement program. Additional funding is being added to start a new pavement replacement project, as well as helping to balance the program. And the reason we have to balance the program is because the next two tables, Table 3 is an update to the non-motorized, where we're zeroing out funding for a right-of-way for the Downtown Trails Connection project. The reason we're zeroing it out is because we're moving it to beyond 2022, so outside of the life of this current TIP, because it is not needed, or they won't be able to get to it in time for this fiscal year, which, just so everyone knows, ends at the end of September. So it's relatively short time away. And so that project is still moving forward. That money is just being moved out to a later year, which is pretty common with transportation projects. The next one, Table 4, Studies and Plans. So there's a couple things happening here. The first is additional funding is being added to the MTP for modeling work. This is for our Vision Zero or Vision Eval modeling effort. So it's like a policy level model. Our current travel model is very specific. It doesn't do well with policy level decisions. Say you wanted to do like parking pricing or something like that. Our current model has a difficulty being able to do that in a timely manner. So our idea is to try and get this Vision Eval online, which allows us to do those policy level changes that we are bringing forward or recommending as part of the MTP, and see what it does to the system overall. It's really very beneficial. A lot of other NPOs do it. It's called strategic planning. And so we're trying to move forward into the modern era of planning. So we need about $100,000 for that, as you see that's being added there. And this funding is being added as part of the Coronavirus Response Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. AMATS has about $11 million of this funding. And so we are recommending 100,000 of it for the traffic model or the modeling efforts as part of the MTP, as well as $250,000 for the safety plan, which is on the same table. So basically what this is replacing our STBG allocation with this SRSA funding. And the thing about the SRSA funding is it does not require a match. So it is a lot easier for us to be able to move forward on these planning projects where we often have difficult time coming up with the match. That's all I have. I'm here for questions.
So just to confirm, this additional money is to do more with the travel demand model?
Correct. Yes.
And is this part of the current work that's being done?
Yes.
And I know that we talked about before, is this going to be ready in time for the DB?
We're doing everything we can. That's why we're moving pretty quickly on this to get this funding in here so we can continue moving forward on the model update.
And how much of this is going to consultants versus in-house?
All of it would be consultant work. So in-house is funded through the UPWP.
And do we have a consultant in place?
They're still working on the contract at this point.
Did I ask any questions that I shouldn't have asked?
I think we're good.
I do have one
Okay,
question.
other questions from the committee?
Yeah, on the non-motorized, I've seen 2 or 3 different versions of the downtown trail connection, and I'm not sure which one this is.
I'm fairly certain this is the one that's the bigger trail connection that's going near the railroad right of way.
Is it all the way around there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
And so you're pushing that out of here. You do realize on there being construction on the bridge that you need to go under next year.
My understanding, we just had a meeting about this, is they're still in line with it. This actually came from the project itself, pushing this information out. So this is all from them asking us to move it out. So as far as I know, James, unless you have something other, we're still in line with meeting those deadlines.
All right.
They're well aware of them, yes.
All right, good. My concern is we're going out, really trying to make sure that we can accommodate whatever we can for you guys. I don't want you to get pushed so far out that we're done and then you show up and it doesn't work. So.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Questions, comments? Any committee members on teams that want to comment? Or have questions? Anyone online and public members? Okay, what is the will of the committee?
I'll move to approve TIP administrative modification number 6 as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Loomis, seconded by Mr. Van Hove. Are there any objections to the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, thank you, Aaron, for your presentations on those. Let's move on to the project and plan updates. I see that we have one item on our agenda, the 2023 to 2026 nominations. Is that yours again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the rest of them are all me. So. Okay, this was just to give a heads up to the committees. I'm sure most of you saw, we sent our notice about our 30-day public comment period, or our 30-day comment period requesting nominations for our new TIP. So the comment period ends February 14th by 5 p.m. We've already gotten a few non-motorized comments. I did receive a question today from a member of the public asking if nominations need to be submitted by groups or organizations, or if anyone can send them in. And our stance is anyone can send them in. You do not have to be a special member of any group or anything. And our intent with the nomination forms is do the best you can to answer the questions. If you don't know, it's okay. You can still submit the nomination. Staff will do our best. And if the person leaves contact information, we can reach out to them once we get the nomination forms. I also highly encourage people to call, email, myself or Christine Schutte, the AMATS info one, if they have questions about the nominations.
Not before. Are you okay if I?
Are you vaccinated, Mr. Buff? I feel weird.
We've got it.
There we go. Perfect. So any questions for Aaron on the TIP nominations process? One question I do have, if the public does do a nomination form and fill it out and the project and the way that they've presented it is kind of almost there, but not quite as refined as, say, somebody who's done a lot of these can do, is there, when it gets scored, is there a chance at that point to kind of refine it and like really kind of gather it up as a big project, or how does that work?
Yeah, we score them as they're submitted to us, but if we know there's some kind of concern about them, we can look at that as part of the scoring, or after the scoring, we can score it, make note about it, and bring that to the committees and say, we saw this project, it needed a little bit of tweaking, what do you guys think? And kind of make sure that's part of the public process, so it's not us as staff making all the tweaks behind the scenes so no one knows what's going on. So.
Right, so you'll bring it as it was submitted in
yes.
Our committee and the public and the policy committee.
Yes, we may have recommendations for changes, but I would like to preserve what the public sends us, unless it's saying we don't know, and then staff has to look up the information and provide that.
Okay. So to be clear here, here's what the public submitted, here's what staff provided.
Correct.
Then it comes to us and.
Yeah, we'll probably do some kind of sit-down work session with the committees to go over all the scoring and ranking and talk about them and kind of start making the selection of which projects to put in there. Staff will probably come with its own recommendation, and then we'll kind of have discussions as we have in the past.
Okay. Sounds good, very helpful, thank you. Other questions? Okay, let's move on to the general information updates. Item 7A, advisory committee term limits.
So this is me as well. Before you all, I don't know if you have a copy to put on the board or not, Christine. I forgot to ask you that, but before everyone in the room, we have AMATS committee membership list for your guys' kind of review. So what's happening here is a member of the policy committee asked for us to bring forward information on where everyone sits in terms of their appointments to our subcommittee, so BPAC, CAC, and FAC. I am kind of picking this up at the last minute, so I apologize if I don't have every answer, but I'll do my best. So we gathered this information so you can see who's on the committee and when they were last appointed or reappointed, if such was the case. You'll see that we have 2 vacancies, one on the BPAC and one on the CAC, but all the rest of the committee seats are filled currently. You know, one of the reasons besides bringing this forward, because the policy committee member asked, is staff is trying to work on getting all this information organized for the next coordinator who comes in. So they can kind of hit the ground running with all this information. Where are they at with the committees? What do we need to do going forward? And just a heads up, you know, we want to try and work on reappointing these individuals more often than they have been in the past. And so you will probably be seeing something come through the next couple of months for reappointments to the committees, depending on when they were last appointed. I also will give a heads up. There are certain individuals that represent organizations or groups that are very limited in the people that they can send to represent on our committees. So they may be reappointed more than once. A good example of that is the Alaska Trucking Association, for example, only has 2 people. Joe, Michelle, and I believe the person in the front who helps with the administrative work. So in terms of reappointing Joe and Michelle more than one time, you may see him come through more than one time. We work with the organizations, committees, whatever it is, to rotate those people as often as possible, but some just can't happen. So.
You're gonna find out what the railroad.
There are individuals, you know, the port, railroad, et cetera. A lot of the freight committee is made up of that. So, and so I just wanted to bring this forward, just give you guys a heads up. You'll be seeing more on this in the coming months.
Sounds good. Any questions? And looking at this table, there are some from 2015, and if it's a 3-year term, 2 term limits, then they've kind of turned out. Usually would they get reappointed after the 3-year term to the 2nd term? That's typically how it would be done?
Yeah, you're correct.
And then after their 2nd term, unless they were a specialty organization that didn't have options, then we would say thank you for your service and open it up for applications. Could they reapply, and if they're the only ones that we could reappoint them, or?
Typically, if they're the only person, so say there's an organization of 1 person and they're the only one who could be represented, I don't think we've discussed exactly how that would happen, but my recommendation is we just bring them forward for reappointment by the committees with the recognition that this person is the only person that can fill this seat. We should just reappoint them and kind of move on.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you, Aaron, for all your work on this. I know managing 2 jobs right now is, yeah, pretty impressive, so thank you for everything that you're doing. Moving on to item 8, committee comments. Would anyone in the committee like to make some comments about the organizations? Usually DOT has like updates on federal funding or something like that.
Most of the folks from headquarters program development are in TRB, Washington, D.C. right now, so probably will be updates forthcoming.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone else from the committee? Any other committee comments? For traffic, one that I'll make is that our traffic calming position is now open. We are looking to hire an additional person on our staff. So if you know someone that would be a great fit, we definitely need some additional help to fill that position and meet that key community need. It's one of the top priorities that I hear coming from a lot of committee, or a lot of the public as they reach out to our department. So if you know someone, please pass it on. We would be very grateful. Okay, any public comments from the public? See anything online? I don't see anything online. Don't hear anyone speaking up. So thanks everyone for the participation. Our meeting is adjourned at 4:02.
We're done at 3:02.
What?
You said 4:02.
You said